Georgia Department of Community Affairs to provide project-based voucher assistance within the City of Atlanta. Resolution number 2434, the Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta, Georgia seeks authorization to close the $4.1 million co-investment loan for the Proctor development. And resolution number 2436, the Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta, Georgia seeks authorization to acquire certain vacant, abandoned parcels and to enter into a master services agreement with Metro Atlanta Land Bank for the acquisition of tax foreclosed, vacant, and abandoned real property in support of the Bowen Homes Choice Neighborhoods Implementation Grant Program.
May I have a motion to consider, adopt, and approve the consent agenda containing resolutions 2433, 2434, and 2436?
So moved.
May I have a second? All right, so moved by Commissioner Kearse and seconded by Commissioner Elliott. Is there any discussion related to the consent agenda resolutions? All right, hearing no further discussion. And maybe I'll just say a quick thing just for the public to understand that these are one of the important components of the voucher assistance, and I'm sure maybe our CEO will maybe give more detail around this part, but the ability for us to have more voucher assistance coming from the state is an important item and was universally, I think, unanimously approved in our real estate meeting. And so I think of the things that are here, the most important thing is our ability to maybe expand while not cannibalizing the vouchers that we have ourselves. So that was something I want to just kind of highlight for the record. And so should anyone want to dig in deeper on that, we'll talk about that. But that's the exciting thing of the day. So with that said, without any other further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Any abstentions? The motion is carried.
Commissioners, before you is a copy of resolution number 2440, where the Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta, Georgia seeks authorization to approve its comprehensive budget for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2025, and other related matters.
May I have a motion to consider 2440? May I have a, okay. All right, so moved by Commissioner Elliott and seconded by Commissioner Faruqi. And I don't know who is, Venice? Yes, come on up and tell us about our budget.
With pleasure. Good afternoon, Chair Stewart, Vice Chair Kirsch, and Commissioners. My name is Venice Taylor, Chief Financial Officer of Atlanta Housing. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank each of you for your time, guidance, and comments provided in the Audit Finance Committee meetings and briefing sessions with you. Today, we will go over the fiscal year 24 year-to-date budget versus actual as of the end of the third quarter of the current fiscal year. Then we will go over our fiscal year 2025 strategic plan goals and the proposed budget, which allocates our resources and based on our priorities and enables us to achieve those strategic goals. As you will see it on this slide, the year-to-date information as of March 31st for the total sources is $330 million, and the total uses as of Q3 is $323 million. And looking across the year-to-date information, the total sources is $311 million, which is 94% of the budget as of end of Q3. In terms of the uses, the actual comes in at $286 million, which is 88% of the budget for that period. And what that means is that the total sources we have, the actual sources we have as of Q3 exceeds our actual uses as of Q3 by $25 million. As I mentioned, that the total sources coming under the budget by $19 million, but the uses are more than $37 million under the budget. So we are in a solid financial shape. With that, I'm going to turn to Paul to give us an update on fiscal year 2025 strategic plan goals.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, and
Good
happy
afternoon.
fiscal new year to you. I'm Paul Vroniker, the Senior Vice President of Policy and Strategy, and I'm here to explain to you how this budget funds the aggressive strategic plan that this board adopted at the beginning of FY 2023. For the benefit of the public and for those who may not have been in these previous briefings, I just want to explain that the cumulative total is the total numbers of units that, or data as of the end of fiscal year 2025, and it dates back to July 1st, 2022. So these slides show a projection of where we think we will be on these particular goals at the close of FY 2025, a little bit more than 1 year from today. And as has been the convention of this board, we show you the colors to indicate where we believe we are on track, need a little catching up, or falling behind. So, goal 1, this budget funds the creation of 1,350 new affordable housing units. That is a significant investment and acceleration of activity under this strategic plan. It also allocates money for the preservation of 1,114 units. As you can see at the close of year 3 of this strategic plan, so December 31st will be halfway through this 5-year plan. We will be well on track to meet these fiscal year goals. And in the case of our acreage, we will be making significant progress towards catching up on those goals. Next slide, please. In terms of goal number 2, we had 6 goals, as you may recall. Goal 1 was create or preserve 10,000 affordable housing units. Goal 2 was enhancing our existing programs. Goal 3 was creating opportunities to thrive for youth, working families, and seniors. Goal 4 was around partnerships. Goal 5 was around communicating our impact. And goal 6 was about strengthening operations, being more efficient, making sure we're building a talented workforce. So in goal 2, you can see that once again we are on track. We will be providing housing stability to the highest number of families who have formerly experienced or are at risk of experiencing homelessness in the history of this organization. We are on track to provide emergency assistance to over 400 families. That's a short-term intervention. It's a very cost-effective intervention. And we are also catching up despite extreme market pressures with our down payment assistance program to help families build intergenerational wealth. As a reminder, we have had high interest rates, high home prices, very low inventory, fierce competition from investors, and despite that, the team is beginning to pick up the pace in the award of down payment assistance to those families who are trying to participate in the American dream. On goal 3, this budget funds opportunities for summer camps, holiday camps, and after-school programs for youth, scholarships, and job training, upskilling, and economic mobility opportunities for our working families, as well as digital literacy, meals delivered, and health services connections for our seniors. Next slide, please. Goal 4, we have an annual goal of seeking $500,000 that we, from funding sources that we have not traditionally sought as a housing authority, and we will continue to do that in FY 2025. We will also use this funding to build out innovative new storytelling platforms, whether that's the second season of the Unlocked podcast, which is a very successful and entertaining product, and building out our innovative dashboards, automating them, updating the frequency with which they're updated, and just continuing to enhance them. And then finally, we will make sure that the dollars we are putting out into the community serve those who may have historically been excluded from economic and contracting opportunities, and continuing to reduce our carbon footprint. Thank you.
As Chair Stewart said, this is an exciting day. Indeed, it is. Fiscal year 2025 budget is historic for Atlanta housing. It is a $533.9 million balanced budget. It includes $445.6 million, or 83% of the budget for housing and development activities. It also includes $2.1 million for resident activities. Compared with fiscal year 2024 budget, we see almost $82 million increase in funding source. Primarily, it is attributable to the $64 million in housing choice voucher funding from HUD. And yeah, next slide. This chart shows where the sources of funds comes in percentages. As you will see, 3/4 or almost $400 million of housing choice is coming from housing choice current year funding. We also receive 1.9% of our funding, or roughly $10 million, from public housing operating subsidy. In addition, 5.6% of the sources of funds, or $30 million of funds, will come from capital funds program. And we plan to draw down we plan to draw down approximately $67 million of prior year HCV funds or reserves held at HUD, and that's approximately 14.1% of the total sources of funds. This slide shows the major sources of funding in dollars. And as you see, the lion's share of funds will come from HUD and primarily from housing choice vouchers. On this chart, you will see 1/3 of the users, or where the money will go, will be for tenant-based vouchers. And approximately 14.4% of all of the users will be for project-based vouchers. So adding these two together, about half of the funds will go to tenant-based or project-based vouchers. We also allocate 22% of the sources for development and revitalization activities. And on top of that, 7.7% will come from choice neighborhood funds. So adding those two is almost 30% of all of the total uses. And that will be for the development activities to create or preserve the units that Paul referred to earlier. Next. This slide highlights the major uses of funds. Altogether, $284.1 million will be used for housing assistance and subsidy payments to assist almost 22,000 families. $158.7 million will be used for development activities. This is a five-year budget comparison. As you know, we put in a very aggressive strategic plan in fiscal year 2023, and we allocated adequate resources to achieve those aggressive goals. As you will see, for fiscal year 2021, we budgeted almost $400 million. And looking at the first year of the strategic plan, which is fiscal year 2023, that's in excess of $400 million. But compared to that with fiscal year 24, we allocated $452 million for all the uses, while it's $533.9 million for the proposed 2025 budget year. And if we compare fiscal year 23 versus 25, which is the 23 being the first year of the strategic plan, we see 1/3 or 33% of increase. That is a very significant increase where we spend our money, or we plan to spend our money. This slide shows the 5-year activity trend, and you will see that there is a dramatic increase over these 5-year period. Starting with fiscal year 2021, 300 units were created, and overall, it's an uptrend. And going to fiscal year 2022, 516 units were created. And then fiscal year 23 held pretty steady from 2022. But then looking at fiscal year 24, 779 units were created as of May 1st. That is a huge increase. That's a 57% increase. And going from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 2025, it goes from 779 units to 1,350 units. That is an increase of 571 units, or 73% increase. So if we look at the comparison between fiscal year 23 and 25, that is an increase of 854 units, or 122% increase. So if we look at the first couple of years, if we add those together, that's about the same. I mean, total for those 2 years will be comparable to the increase between current fiscal year to fiscal year 2025. That's the scale of our intent for development activities to create new units or preserve existing units.
Felice, can I add a point here? Because I really want to make sure that the public, and I really hope reporters are going to get this slide. Let me put it this way. In 4 years, we would be quadrupling quadrupling, right? The unit creation, let me add that that benchmark 4 years ago is prior to our current mayor's administration, right? So if you think about that curve, it's quadruple the number of units being created, affordable units being created. In comparison, if I'm thinking about it from a fiscal stewardship perspective, in that time frame, the budget has increased by 33%.
No.
Right?
Correct.
So we're increasing, we're basically keeping the budget pretty efficient. The increase is only 33%, whereas the unit creation is more than 400%. Like, I want that point to really be understood by the public. The second point I would add is, since the strategic plan adoption and the charge that Atlanta Housing is going to contribute 10,000 units over the course of 5 years, which would be 2 years ago, we have still doubled unit creation since then. So I think that that is important for the public as well as residents of our city to understand from both fiscal stewardship perspective and the level of execution that has dramatically gone up, right, in the agency. I mean, when you have, I'm going to give a car analogy. If you have a 6-cylinder engine and you're only using 2 cylinders, right? I mean, the intent of this board and the leadership team is to ensure that we are running on all 6 cylinders. We're using as much horsepower as we have as an agency to make a massive impact in affordable housing and how we can move that needle. So still on that journey, but I really want this chart to sort of tell the story in connection with the budget that is being adopted. So I just wanted to make that point and connect the fiscal stewardship to the fact that we've over a period where the budget has, increased by maybe, 33%, we've quadrupled the affordable housing unit creation activity. So just wanted to make sure we get that point across.
We really appreciate your, your comment and acknowledgement, Commissioner Faruqi. In developing fiscal year 2025 budget, we put people first. This slide shows the impact of our proposed uses. $274 million will help almost 22,000 families with a tenant or project-based vouchers. $38.5 million will assist close to 3,000 families, and almost 2,400 families will be helped. Those are families who have experienced homelessness or they have disabilities. Some of the funds will also go to veterans. And we are going to dedicate $3 million for 405 families who are currently not in our programs, but those will be temporary emergency assistance to prevent displacement. Part of the funds will help 224 first-time home buyers to realize their dream of home ownership and put them in the path of equity and wealth building. In addition, we allocate $1.7 million for youth programs, workforce development, and well-being independence for seniors. So we talked about all these sources, uses of funds. How will they impact our fund balances? As of the end of this current fiscal year end, we project that we will have about $182.5 million with the funds held at HUD. And that includes $122 million of HCV funds or HUD-held reserve. We also expect to have $163.8 million of the funds held locally by Atlanta Housing. Looking across, for the end of the fiscal year 2025, we expect to have about $90 million of funds held at HUD. And the difference is primarily attributable to the drawdown or expenditure of capital funds program. And another big consideration here is the planned drawdown of HUD-held reserve of $67 million. So the decrease of the funds held at HUD will see approximately $91.5 million. In terms of the funds held locally at Atlanta Housing, it will go from $163.8 million to $165.2 million. That is $1.4 million increase, and that's less than 1%. So the funds held locally by Atlanta Housing will stay steady. So the net effect of the total sources and uses for fiscal year 25 is $90.5 million. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions from commissioners?
I don't necessarily have a question per se. First, thank you. I know that a budget of this size is never an easy endeavor, so I wanted to make sure that I thank everyone who played a role, including fellow commissioners, to ensure that we show strong fiscal stewardship and that we are fully optimizing the resources that have become available. All I wanted to say, there was a slide there that disaggregated sort of the different uses that was listed like highlights. My appreciation of that, because as you well know, Madam CEO, when I first came in, I had articulated sort of a storytelling, making sure. And I just fully appreciate you telling a comprehensive story about how the resources are used. There is an idea about who we are and what we do, and then there is the facts that state categorically the deep and diverse investments we make in people and community. And that slide is everything to me, because it talks about the human part of the work we do. That we're more than just steel and concrete and sheetrock, but we're about people and families. And so thank you for that work, and thank you for finding a way to express that in a way that the people can fully appreciate who we are and what we do.
Any other comments? I have one, but I want to wait. Okay.
Thank you.
Stay. So first, thank you for the time. We've spent a lot of time with this. And so I think I want to just echo the parts that, first let me say thank you to Duria, Commissioner Faruqi, let me not be too formal, for all of her leadership from the board perspective on helping us get here. Your leadership has been fantastic, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness that you have put into what is our biggest budget and what we look at as a historic day for the authority. I see this students and the interns in the audience, and so I wanted to kind of help you understand what you're hearing, because you see a bunch of numbers on the screen and you're like, yeah, okay, how does this show up, right? And so when we're telling the story about this, what you want to be telling the story of is that we are doing the most, and I think she gave the car analogy, so I'm sure a lot of you young people can understand that, but when we think about all of the work that we need to do to develop and redevelop and revitalize communities is being funded from a housing and development perspective in the highest and the highest possible way that we've been able to do in our history. So that's the first part. And then the second part of it is that, hey, we have to get the talent right? And the resources that are not in-house to help us execute that. And so that's where this money is all being funded around. And so I just wanted to kind of give you guys a grounding of that. And so for that, we are thankful of that and doing that in a way that's balanced. So we are spending the money, we are taking money from HUD, we are taking from our reserves and saying we are surging and putting all of our efforts this year, and we're certainly going to get to next year. And when you look in here, you also see that we set a plan together, and in that plan, we are now on track for most of the things that we've said we needed to be managing. I say most being almost everything is in green. So we are on track, and so I want to make sure that that's clear. I did have one question. When I was looking at the goal 1, where we talk about we have 4,000 cumulative units that are being created to 82% of the goal. On the first page, there's 4,086, and then when you get to the affordable creation chart, it looks like it's less than that. So I wanted to make sure that, so that nobody else saw those numbers, if you can explain that, just so I understand that before I.
So for transparency and abundant clarification, the unit count in FY '25 will be much higher than 1,350. When we put together the budget, remember we gave you a May 1st date, and there was a whole chunk of new units, both in create and preserve, that were scheduled to close by the end of the fiscal year, right? And we couldn't say exactly which ones would get their certificate on time and exactly which ones were going to be at the finish line, but there's a whole lot of them that are at the 1-yard line. Some of them may close by Friday still. And so in order to avoid confusing you and having your numbers jump around, we just sort of left them out. But there is a whole lot of units, new home flex, co-investment deals, and even a RAD deal that are, I don't want to jinx anything, they're ready to close. And so they will end up, if they don't close by Sunday, they'll be closing in FY '25, and that's the balance.
The number in the original one projects that it's going to happen. The one on this chart that's at the end is to actuals, or close to actuals. Okay.
And to be fair, that yes, the FY '24 number was as of May 1st. We now know that it will already be substantially higher than that by Sunday at midnight. But I can't tell you exactly what that number is going to be at this time.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you for that explanation. I wanted to make sure I was, like, when I do the apples to apples, these creation numbers don't match. So with that, anybody else have any other comments before we take a vote on this budget?
I'll just make out loud one comment that I made, that you'd look at the percentages and assume on that land development one that, that's the one that we're off. But for anyone who works in land development, it's not linear. And I would suggest that we're not doing our jobs if we're developing land overnight without community input and proper planning and all of that. So I wouldn't want anyone to look at that 42% number and think, they're really off target, because that activity goes like this, and that we'll see a big, I would expect, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would expect we'll see a big jump on that in the latter part of the strategic plan.
I think you said it better than I've been able to say it, Commissioner Kirsch.
All right. If there's no other discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Congratulations on the budget. All right. I think now we have a report from the CEO of our Atlanta Urban Development Corporation, John Majors, who I kind of saw him like, he was like, I thought he was preparing himself to walk up here.
Yeah, Chair Stewart, again, let me first extend apologies on behalf of CEO John Majors as well as the City of Atlanta. John has been called to a meeting with the Mayor's Chief Policy Officer. It's an emergency matter that they need to address. We do have the presentation available to share with the board, and we have invited him to come back for our July meeting. In the interim, if there are any questions as the board has opportunity to review the presentations, we will present those to John in order for him to be prepared to address those questions as well.
Thank you so much for that. And given that I've asked for this, I just wanted to make one other comment. There, in this budget book, and you're free to, when you submit it for awards, et cetera, leave that page out. But in the last committee meeting, I knew that was where it was coming from. But in the last committee meeting for finance, I had urged that we actually look at how AUDC, which was established basically a year ago after our last, or around the time our last budget was adopted, that we sort of get a report. There's a subset of the commissioners that are on that board, but not all of us are, to get a report on what projects have been underway, how sort of the spend, even though it is not coming necessarily from AH funds, we still have fiduciary responsibility over how they are used. And we'll talk more about that as the year goes on and make sure we have our I's dotted and T's crossed. But I was wondering if, Madam CEO, if it would be appropriate for your new Chief Housing Officer to say a few words, since he's also been chairing the AUDC board, at least till now, and maybe talk a little bit about what the AUDC has been up to and give us that perspective, but from his new role. Don't want to put him on the spot, but if you know, some comment and overview is feasible.
He absolutely is ready and prepared.
We don't need to march to the presentation, but just I want to get his view on.
This is why
how
you get the
that's
big
going.
bucks, Alan.
Yes.
Exactly, that's right, that's right. Chairman Stewart, that is right.
All right. Well, good afternoon, Chairman Studer, Vice Chair Kirsch, and Board of Commissioners. So here on behalf of my other hat as Chair of the Atlanta Urban Development Corporation, what I can tell you and attest to is that we have been very busy and very active, really from day one on both an operational front as well as an organizational front in terms of really trying to build out the framework for the organization, bylaws, policies, procedures, so on and so forth. And we got a long way, to go, quite honestly, but we're committed to getting all of those things in place. But from an activity standpoint, John and his team with Autness Group have been tremendously active. I think to date, they have received and entertained and in some form or state of review about 14 different proposals. There are probably, I would imagine, 4, possibly a 5th proposal that are currently active and under consideration, including 2 transactions that I think are going to come up at the next board meeting for the AUDC for final approval in order to fund those opportunities in advance and move towards closing. Again, John and his team, they've been active on multiple fronts. There's been an intergovernmental agreement that has been signed and executed with Atlanta Housing. There's currently intergovernmental agreements that are pending with Invest Atlanta as well as Atlanta Public Schools, and all of those essentially kind of revolve around the disposition of public land, which is one of the charges that's been given to AUDC to facilitate and expedite those types of dispositions for the creation of affordable housing and revitalization of communities. And there are active RFPs that are out and that are currently being evaluated and under consideration, most notably Midtown Fire Station, which is in its final throes of evaluation and approval, as well as Thomasville Heights, which is the Atlanta housing site that we're all familiar with. So again, the team has been tremendously active, in terms of really trying to do what the aim and the goal is for the organization, which is to act as a catalyst and an accelerator for deals and transactions that need to move forward, but as well as to facilitate and really give a place for dispositions that can happen in a very efficient and effective manner, all driving towards the goals and strategies of the mayor's administration, achieving these 20,000 units of housing created as well as preserved over the next 8 years, and facilitating also Atlanta Housing's goals as well, working in very close partnership with Atlanta Housing. So can give you more, kind of context, insight. But John and his team, kudos to them. They basically, started, right from the start, from the ground running. The board, even though it's a governance board, I think we've kind of morphed into a bit of a working board because we've been heavily engaged and involved in kind of shaping the direction of the organization. And yeah, I'm very pleased with the progress to date and looking forward to even more progress going forward.
That was super helpful. Thank you for humoring me. It was very helpful, honestly, for those of us who are not on that board and don't get to see that activity. And
Yeah.
I've talked to Terry, of course, about making sure over the course of the next year that we align our governance policies and protocols in a way that keeps everybody out of trouble.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks.
If I may just add, I've enjoyed serving on the board with several folks here, and I know that there was this question from the beginning and a question that continues to get asked of, what is the AUDC and why did we need another entity? And if you know two things from this, if you're sitting in the audience and going, what was this? I just want two things to come from this. One is we needed an entity where we could develop public land across different ownerships. And if you're sitting in Thomasville and you've got Atlanta Public Schools land and City of Atlanta land and Atlanta Housing land and maybe watershed management land and think even some MARTA, did I say MARTA yet? There needed to be an entity where you could do shared planning across those different ownership structures in order to achieve the best outcome for that community and not having all of those things done in isolation. So that was really the, I think, inspiration for it. And then it's also become an entity to accomplish something that Madam CEO commented at our last board meeting is something we've been trying to do for decades, perhaps, in the housing space, which is establish private enterprise agreements, which is a way for us to incentivize mixed income, affordable housing in a way that can operate efficiently, given a property tax structure. So if you don't remember anything else, those are the two things I'd encourage you to remember about why we have the AUDC, which is about this public land and about being able to achieve this private enterprise agreement structure. And kudos to our board chair of the AUDC, as well as John, and I had to step away for really advancing those two items really quickly over the last year.
And there will be a quiz for the young people right after this meeting. All right. Any other comments relative to the AUDC before we? Are we calling AUD? I thought it was a TC. All right, AUD.
AUD, all right.
All right. Okay.
We'll drop the C.
Drop the C. I guess that's what I'm saying. All right. Fair enough. All right. It's probably a time for us to say, Madam President, come on up and talk to us about what you have going on. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am so grateful for the opportunity to stand before you today. To our Atlanta Housing Board of Commissioners, our Atlanta Housing team members who are here in person, as well as those who are watching online, and the general public. Today, for me, represents 154 days that I've been in, that I actually looked at each one of you and accepted the charge to serve as the 20th president and CEO of this housing authority. And I will tell you that the appreciation and the gratitude that I feel to each of you as my commissioners is, quite honestly, I don't have words to say. Your support and your commitment to me in this role, as well as to this agency, has been unwavering. We are literally moving at a pace that has been unseen in the last 10 years by the Housing Authority, and that would not be able to move forward without the support and dedication of this board, as well as our AHT members. I will tell you, we've had an interesting 154 days, and I'm speaking from the board vote, because although my tenure officially started on February 12th, you have to know that when I stood before you and accepted that charge, that I started right then, making sure that we were positioning this agency for the greatness that the agency can put forth, and quite honestly, that the people of our city deserve. And so I am elated, we can go to the next slide, to stand before you to thank you for your unanimous approval of the largest and historic budget that this agency has seen. The budget that we have before us represents, as I believe Fanice stated, a 33% increase from the adoption of the strategic plan. But more importantly, if you look at the activity that we have the opportunity to lift up, it realizes the commitment and the promise that I made to you, as well as to my team, that we would put people first, that we would be intentional and hyper-focused on making sure that we use housing as the vehicle to lift our families to a different level of economic self-sufficiency. And we're doing that not just in words, but in action. And that action is shown by the budget you see before us. I am definitely elated to say that by the end of this fiscal year, we will be at over 8,200 units of our 10,000 units. And that is a huge Herculean lift, because this year alone, we're going to close over 24 transactions to make sure that we can lift that possibility up. And literally right now, Lisa, I hope you have that HUD approval letter, because I have a transaction right now that I'm waiting for a HUD approval letter on. That's how serious we are about making sure Atlanta Housing keeps its promise to the residents of our city. And quite honestly, it's what we're supposed to do. This is our why. We are here to make sure that we can provide resources to our families, that we can ensure that our seniors, our seasoned residents, age in place with dignity and grace, and that quite honestly, that we are serving as a safe haven so that our families and our children don't have to worry about where they're going to sleep, while we can help them to go to a different level of economic self-sufficiency. A couple of highlights from the budget, and I want to thank Commissioner Alvarado. Last year, he actually talked to us about making sure that we were putting people first, and it was really as if he had been on the board the entire tenure of many of you, because that was the same thing and the same message that we've heard from the Board of Commissioners from day one. And so we are very hypersensitive in making sure that we show that for every dollar that we're allocated, that we're able to show who actually will be able to benefit from those dollars. I would also like to just take a point of personal privilege. I had an opportunity to work with Commissioner Faruqi at the City of Atlanta when I served in a variety of capacities, and I actually thought I was pledging my sorority again. When I worked with Commissioner Faruqi at the City of Atlanta, especially when she served as Chief Operating Officer. But I don't think I've shared this with you, but I do want to share it with you publicly. I thank you for your leadership at the city, and I thank you for your leadership on the board. The process that this agency undertakes to develop its budget, quite honestly, is the process I learned from you when you was Chief Operating Officer at the City of Atlanta. And so I want to thank you for that. I want to thank my team members and my staff for adopting, because they were like, "Ooh, this is a lot." And I was like, well, I know we can do it because I saw what Commissioner Faruqi did as COO. And so the reason why you have such a thorough budget presentation is because I learned that probably over, but probably back, 2010? 2010 and 2011, watching her lead the City of Atlanta. And she led it with accountability and transparency, and that's what we're endeavoring to do here. You can go to the next slide. And so in addition to the passage of our budget, which really speaks to goal number 6, strengthening our operations for Atlanta Housing, we also are looking at, this board just approved resolutions that would have additional impact on our strategic plan. The first would be goal number 1, where we have pledged to create and preserve 10,000 units. With the passage of the Proctor, which is a project we expect to close in August of this year, we'll be creating an additional 137 units. And of those 137 units, we're looking at about 41 of those units being affordable. And so that's a 30% affordability. What's really interesting, though, about the Proctor is that it's the first time that we've been able to get a guarantee on the front end that a development partner will set aside those affordable units for our tenant-based voucher participants. And many of you know that not only do we have a gigantic waiting list, that the individuals who have been able to receive vouchers often have challenges searching for units. And so to be able to use this as a model as to how we move forward with any project that we incentivize, especially projects that are funded through the co-investment, is something that we'll be working with our Chief Housing and Real Estate Officer to do so. We also I think it's important to note that the total development cost of the Proctor is about $54.1 million. While there are different public subsidy sources from AUD as well as Invest Atlanta, Atlanta Housing is committed $4.1 million to realize this development. And then additionally, when the strategic plan was formulated and ultimately adopted by the board, we heard two messages very clear, or really three: get to work, improve communications, and we need better partnerships. And so, two of the resolutions you approved today really speak to that partnership relationship. First, we're expanding our relationship with the Department of Community Affairs. And again, as the chairman and vice chair stated on last week, this is not to cannibalize the voucher allocation that we have, but it's really to add to. And when in a city with the affordability crisis that Atlanta has, we're looking to have every responsible subsidy resource come in to help us attack this problem. And so we'll be working with the Department of Community Affairs with conditions, because we definitely want their voucher allocation, but we also want to make sure that we still have the level of quality that we know we should provide to our residents in receiving subsidy assistance. And then secondly, Bowen Homes is a huge priority of our administration, and we're partnering with the Land Bank Authority to move forward very quickly to be able to acquire tax delinquent and blighted properties along that gateway corridor to make sure that we can continue to elevate the Bowen Homes project. We know we'll be closing on the first phase of senior housing in October of this year, but wouldn't it be wonderful if we can go ahead and impact the gateway to that site prior to that time? And so these efforts will allow us to do so. Next slide, please. I would also like to take a moment to just highlight some activity that we've had over the last month in partnership with Southface, and I would like to say that our team actually wrote the grant that was submitted by Southface. We received a grant award of about $1.9 million. The picture that's before you is the Auburn Glen apartment complex. That apartment complex is probably about 20 years old, and so when it was initially developed, it was not developed with some of the technologies and energy efficiency features that we see now today. And so this grant will assist Atlanta Housing in being able to upgrade and weatherize some of the units that are within our portfolio. I believe we have the opportunity to impact about 200 units through this partnership with Southface. The next picture represents Homeownership Month, and Angela, if you would share with the board the newspaper from Atlanta Voice. So if you follow us on social media, and I won't have you raise your hands because I know everybody follows us on social media. We have literally been hyper-focused this month lifting up Homeownership Month, because we know that homeownership is one way that people of color really have access to gaining generational wealth. And in our program, since 2018, we've been able to impact over 1,200 families, investing about $28 million. And again, we're able to invest that $28 million in our down payment assistance program because of our MTW flexibility. And so over the last month, we've had a robust social media campaign, just lifting up that investment, sharing stories of our participants, but we also took the opportunity to partner with Atlanta Voice to have a sponsorship section where we have a few op-eds as well as an advertisement highlighting our down payment assistance program. Since the newspaper was released, I believe on Monday, we have received a lot of positive feedback about just people wanting to know more information about our homeownership program and how they can partner. We also joined our sister agency, Invest Atlanta, this month in a homeownership celebration, making sure that the dream and the possibility of reality was being able to be shared with so many of our residents who desire to become homeowners. The next slide is we had a wonderful, fabulous celebration at the Civic Center, on the grounds of the Civic Center for Juneteenth. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Commissioner Elliott was trying to do the electric slide. But I will tell you that Commissioner Elliott and Commissioner Faruqi represented this board and Atlanta Housing very well in celebrating with our residents and with our seniors. We held a health and awareness training, we had cooking demonstrations, we had dancing and exercises, but more importantly, we invested in people. And we were able to really have a robust time at the Civic Center for celebrating Juneteenth. And then today, as a matter of fact, at our headquarters, we are continuing to lift up our Atlanta Housing Wellness Council and making sure that we encourage healthy living among our own employees. And so we partner with Earth Elements, which is a minority-owned vendor, to provide fresh fruits and vegetables twice a month during the summer months for our employees. And so this is an opportunity for our employees, really for our employees to have employment engagement with one another, but also have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. Now, the thing that really excites me, especially when I'm looking at budget numbers, is that the cost for this event is reimbursed by our insurance carrier. And so that was a part of the negotiations that was led by our Human and Resources Senior Vice President to make sure that we would be able to be reimbursed, but we could also continue to invest within our employees. I would be, and I also want to go back to the budget because I was so excited for unanimous approval for my first budget that I failed to acknowledge and recognize the team members that made that happen. The board was a huge push to help us move forward, but we would not be before you today if not for Fenice Taylor, our Chief Financial Officer, as well as Dwayne Vaughn, our Chief Operating Officer. I want to give them just a round of applause for the work that they lifted up. They were up to 1 o'clock this morning, getting ready for today, and quite honestly, I don't think I've seen either one of them all day because they've been making sure that we prepared properly. I also want to acknowledge Paul Vraniker, Constance Graham, and Maria Calhoun, because it took the 5 of them really working collectively together to lift up the budget that you have before you. But more so than the budget, what Dwayne shared with me today is that Paul, and I hope I can, well, I'm going to say it anyway. Paul shared with him that in his tenure with Atlanta Housing, this is the first time that he would stake his reputation on every number that we presented to you. And that's the work of our team, and that's the commitment of our team and the dedication that our folks are putting forth to make sure that we not only have accountability, transparency, but that we really have a momentum that we've never had before. And I also want to thank everybody that touched the budget, from our distribution team who made the copies to folks who went through and just did the editing, to just everyone, because it truly takes a team effort to make sure that we're able to not just, again, lift up the budget, but really realize the activities that we promised that we would do. So I just wanted to take a point of privilege to go back and acknowledge our team. Next slide. And then I want to acknowledge our interns. Also, and if I could just have our intern class of 2025 stand. So we are excited about our internship program, and the 2025 class represents about 17 students, of which 16 students are college students and 1 individual is a high school student, but in dual enrollment with Auburn University. And so during the summer, we not only have our intern, and Zay is on the camera today. And doing a fabulous job, so we appreciate that. But not only are our interns learning valuable career and professional skills, we're also investing in our interns. We have a robust curriculum for financial and literacy training. We make sure that we do resume writing training, interview skills, as well as presentation skills, so that while the time they have with us during the summer, while they're learning the work that we do, we also want to make sure that we're preparing and equipping them for that next level, next step in their life. And so I'm just very excited to have them join us today. And we also, I believe, on LinkedIn, did a huge announcement welcoming our interns for this summer. Next slide, please. We have a few events that are coming up, and we will make sure this information is widely shared with all commissioners. But we have our Hope Atlanta's Women's Kitchen, where we'll be volunteering to help that center, and our interns will be volunteering with us. We also have our Back to School Expo for our residents. We have our Choice Atlanta Family Expo for both University Homes and Bowen Home residents, as well as I mentioned last month we were doing a community engagement forum at the Civic Center. We had to reschedule that, so that will be actually take place this month on July 15th. And then we also have, I believe, our resident forum. And the resident forum is an opportunity for former residents from Herndon Homes, Bowen, Layla Valley, just any public housing, former public housing site that we're moving forward with development activity, to come in and share with us their thoughts, but also to gain firsthand information as to how we're proceeding. And so we're very excited about that. I do want to take an opportunity to bring to your attention, on yesterday at the City of Atlanta's Community Development and Human Services Committee meeting, we had about a dozen or so residents from GE Towers. GE Towers is located along Glen Street in the Mechanicsville community. Those residents shared their extreme displeasure of some conditions that they're currently being faced with in working with the property manager. The property manager is Lincoln Properties. This property is currently it's a home flex property that we provide subsidy to, but it's also currently under renovation that's being funded by Invest Atlanta. So I have been in communication with Invest Atlanta, and our team has been in communication with Lincoln Properties to ensure that the property owner, and we've been in conversation with the property owner, that he organizes a meeting with our residents prior to July 4th, but we also will be doing a 100% inspection on all units that are subsidized by Atlanta Housing. So I did want to make sure that you heard that from me based upon the issues that I heard on yesterday. I actually went back and viewed the public comment section to make sure that I understood exactly what the issues were. And then it is extremely hot right now in Georgia. It is extremely hot, and so we have called for 100% wellness checks on all AH-owned and assisted properties to make sure that our residents do have access to air, as well as any other amenity, life essentials that they need. We will have the results of that in today, and during the summer, we will be doing regular wellness checks just to make sure the welfare of our residents is being taken care of. Next slide. And so I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge Trish O'Connell. I will tell you, we're inviting Trish to come back to the board meeting in July so that we can do an official recognition. But I have to say that this is Trish's last board meeting as an Atlanta Housing employee. Trish is slated to retire after 23 years of unwavering service to our agency. She's slated to retire on July 19th. And on last Friday, we had a pizza toast to Trish to just acknowledge her just the working commitment she's had with this agency. One of the things, and I shared this last Friday and I shared here, when we look at Roosevelt Hall, when we look at University Homes, when we talk about Bowen, that would not have been possible without Trish O'Connell, and that often gets erased. Trish served as the lead for Atlanta Housing on the planning grants for both University Homes and Bowen Homes, which resulted in the Choice Neighborhood Implementation Grants that we received. And I will tell you, on the University Home side, I was at the City of Atlanta, and she was relentless making sure, you remember, Doria, she was relentless making sure that the City of Atlanta committed, especially after Atlanta Housing applied the first time and did not receive the grant. The second time, the city for University Homes served as a co-applicant, but Trish was the lead in making sure that happened, and that was a $30 million opportunity that has been leveraged with over $250 million. And then Bowen Homes. When everyone thought that Bowen Homes would not move forward, Trish was behind it, making sure it did. And so I want to publicly just thank her. She has a heart of gold, and she truly loves this agency and the work we do. And if you would just join me in just acknowledging her. She will be greatly missed, but I have her cell phone number and her address. And again, we are inviting Trish to come back for more of a formal presentation to her in July. But I just could not let today leave without just thanking her for what she's done for Atlanta housing in turbulent times. She stood with this agency, and quite honestly, what she's done for the city. She could literally drive her granddaughter through the city and point to development projects and communities that she's been able to have an impact on. And I think we should, again, make sure we applaud that. Next slide, please. And so, my Board of Commissioners, you have made me extremely, extremely happy with a unanimous approval on the budget, but you also have made me happy because I know that as I stand here as your CEO, I know I have your full support to make sure that we do the right thing in leading this agency to the next level. So I thank you, and I'm here to address any questions that you may have.
I don't have any questions. Anybody has any questions? All right. Well,
Right.
if there are no other questions, then thank you for your report.
Thank you, sir.
Well done.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any comments from the commissioners before we adjourn? Awesome. All right. Well, I will only just say, I also want to just say a quick thank you, Trish, for new commissioners, the work that you do and how you helped us get to where we are, where we can actually ask intelligent questions. You're a key component of that work, and so thank you so much, and we will miss you. And we'll talk to you and do all the missing you stuff again next month. All right, well, if we don't have any other comments, then I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Don't be slow on that one.
Second.
All right. So moved by Commissioner Alvarado and seconded by Commissioner Kearse. All in favor of adjournment, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. I know I didn't hear any opposition to that. And so this meeting is adjourned at 3:25 p.m. Thank you.